Hey everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online Paddle School. We're back here on YouTube for episode number 21 of the K2N vlog. Last week we talked about receiving boats and refurbishing them, and I wanted to quickly go over that I referenced that the OC1 that we received is an Antares, and the boat that we have is actually an Aries. In the first iteration and generation of the Aries, it was the little Antares. So on the side of the boat, if you see the decal saying Ant in lowercase, and then Aries in big words, it's the little Antares. They since dropped the Ant and kept the Aries, but the vessel itself is the same hull that we use today as the Aries. The boat is totally functional. It has been on the water. Somebody else has used the boat, not knowing that I even refurbished it. So very cool to have it out back in operation. So this week I did want to talk about the outrigger canoe being used as a tool for time trials. This conversation is applicable in the world of OC6 as well as in Dragon Boat. And it's funny to think of that because some of the people that only do those disciplines and don't cross over may not know that OC1 as a time trial is fairly controversial even through outrigger canoe and then in the Dragon Boat. And so the whole basis of using an OC1 is to get the idea of the individual paddler's skill level and power output. So making them go a certain distance by themselves gives you an idea of their skill level because you're gonna get a numerical time at the end of their time trial for whatever distance it is, and you can compare this number with other people. So the idea would be taking the strongest paddlers at your disposal and putting them into the team boat would make it go the fastest. In 2018, when I started my club, I had made two purchases. I bought a Dragon Boat and I purchased an OC2. From the very inception of the club, people were going to be time trialed in the OC2 setting, and we were going to use those times to insert them into our race team. Our highest output race team of all time was battling each other on a day-to-day basis, using this as a metric to make it into the boat. So I'm very familiar with this conversation and trying to navigate this metric and again, use it to your advantage as a club operator and a race team organizer to put forth your best possible combination of paddlers. Back in 2018, when I would tell people that we would structure our club in this way, it was a very bizarre thing. There were a lot of organizations that didn't even know what an outrigger canoe was here in Florida, even at that time frame. Many of the national team selections were based on how many push-ups you can do and the eyeball test, as opposed to using a time trial as a metric for selection. I would get into these conversations and they would devolve very quickly, and like 6 or 7 people would jump in and say, hey, this is stupid, you're stupid, everything you're doing is stupid, and so on. And so I would usually try to be a little bit more cautious when I would enter into that type of conversation. But now in 2024, when we look at most selection processes all the way up to the national team and going into a world formatting, there is some sort of individual time trialing mechanism that they use in every age category. So now having this conversation is a lot easier because the majority of people understand and accept this as a reality of being in a team person vessel. But I recently had this conversation again, and it was very reminiscent of 2018, right? In trying to convince people that solely do the one discipline to cross over into something else in order to showcase their ability. And ultimately, the reason that people don't want to do it as a purist is because they lack the skills in this vessel to really showcase their ability. Going into an outrigger canoe introduces a lot of different ideas that you have to sort of master to even have the chance to show how fast you can move a boat. Steering is one option using the pedals, right? It's very learned to push with your heels instead of to drive through the ball of your foot. There is a balance demand as well. If you're paddling on the right side with the left side ama, the boat inherently can flip over. So there are some skills that you have to invest some time into learning that are not immediately present in an OC6 or a dragon boat, right? You get to sit with very minimal balance demands, and you can move around however you wish to and put energy into the water. There is no steering, there is nothing but forward strokes, and there is nothing balance-wise hindering your ability. When these paddlers that only paddle in the big boats go in the small boats, they're immediately hit with a reality check. I can't showcase my perceived skills in a one-on-one format. And these paddlers aren't totally wrong, right? The leg position in a dragon boat in an OC6 is a little different than it would be in an OC1. OC1, both feet have to be forward in order to steer it, right? When you look at a Va'a, which is a rudderless outrigger canoe, you can have your feet all over and it's an open deck cockpit similar to these larger boats. But then the problem there is you have to switch and take different kinds of strokes from forward to side to draw strokes in order to steer the thing. So now you add in something that's way more complicated in keeping a vessel going straight. And now it's really not a showcase of your overall horsepower, but of steering. And then again, the steering and the balance in the outrigger canoe is a tough hurdle to overcome. I personally do not have a ton of sympathy for people that are unwilling to take the time to learn this. Outrigger canoes in our area are very present and available. And the option to find somebody that will teach you to use them is not that large of an endeavor, right? I have made a business out of teaching people to use the equipment that I have available here in Lake Hernando. And so taking people that are only one-sided dragon boat paddlers and teaching them to steer a vessel, to paddle efficiently on the non-AMA side, it doesn't take that long. On average, it usually takes between 4 and 6 hours for somebody to get the hang of the steering and the amount of balance that is necessary. If they are paddling on the AMA side, even less so. Really, they're just trying to figure out how to steer the vessel and overall be comfortable using their legs properly. And so that 4 to 6 hours ends the conversation, right? So instead of people complaining about the formatting and not thinking that it is productive for choosing paddlers in a team boat, right? It just shows that they haven't put in that little bit of time. And this does change if you're not doing a sprint style OC1 time trial, right? So if you have to do your time trial in the ocean, paddling multiple miles, right? Now the skill level for that goes up where you can't just get the hang of it a handful of hours. But in sprinting, all you need to do is paddle a couple of hundred times and make sure that you're going relatively straight, right? It's a very low barrier to entry to showcase your skill. The next problem that paddlers have in the team boats going into the small boat is many paddlers in the team boats don't really know how to use their legs or their hips. When paddlers have one leg in front of them, they are able to flail their torso around more freely and having a support leg in front of them. When you have both feet in front of you, you don't have this same ability to shift and transfer your center of gravity around. And for many paddlers that are limited in their motion, this robs them of all of their ability to go through a competent paddle stroke. Now looking at this, does that mean that not having one leg forward means that the stroke can't be effective? No, it means that the paddler is highly limited in how they're using the entirety of their body. Being able to engage your legs and hips and find pressure in the water with both feet forward, it is the same movement pattern that we were looking for in swiveling your hips and finding your rotation. When you put one leg forward, you can increase this leverage, right? But it is stemming from the ability to use it with both feet forward. You can't do it with both legs in front of you. The amount of pressure and ability that you have with one leg forward is likely not as high as you think it is. So commanding the boat and the overall leg position, these are aspects of the time trial that are not totally ideal, right? If we had a vessel that had no balance demand, no steering demands, and you could paddle it individually, we would use that, right? In the world of paddle racing vessels, there is a level of stability that you have to deal with. Every single paddlecraft in the world that is designed to go fast only goes fast because it is unstable. The less friction that it has on the top of the water, the faster it glides through the water. The outrigger canoe is very intelligent with its design in having a very stable attachment arm to the side to minimize the amount of drag and give you a lot of stability. But most other paddlecraft do not have this luxury. So another common alternative that has come up is if I could paddle in a dragon boat by myself with a steersman behind me, I could showcase my skills and be superior to the people that use the outrigger canoe. So this again simplifies everything, right? You have much more open space, less balance to deal with, somebody steering the vessel for you, and now it is a true showcase of your ability. The problem with this is dragon boats are super heavy and they're super long as well. If you have a 1 mile/hour headwind trying to move a 700-pound boat into it, it is going to skew your results tremendously. The smallest amount of wind, the smallest amount of current, the smallest change in water depth, this is going to vastly change your end results. Now you have another exterior factor. You have a steersman that is back there with a 9-foot oar. If they engage putting that oar into the water differently for each person, the amount of drag that causes will skew the results overly too much. And even if this test could work, right? Now one of the other problems that you have is the larger the paddler is, the more successful they will be moving the larger boat, right? If you have a 250-pound man in this vessel, his ability to move 700 additional pounds to his own is much higher. An 80-pound lady carries 700 pounds additional weight is the counter example, where she is not going to be able to lug all of this extra weight as effectively. Another great way to look at it is the amount of weight you can lift in a gym proportional to your body weight. If you can bench press 225, that's awesome. If you're 250 pounds, that's not really good because it's under your overall body weight. But if you're 135 pounds and can bench 225, that's a very good bench press because it's 180%. Now, when we look at moving a dragon boat that's 700 pounds, somebody that is 100 pounds has to move 7 times the amount of weight proportional to their own. In a full dragon boat, when you insert the smaller paddler, the dynamic changes, right? You have momentum and inertia that is being created around you. So being a light and strong paddler can be very effective. When you remove inertia and momentum, now you only have the singular paddle. The larger they are body mass wise gives them an inherent advantage in this dynamic, right? And so when you're in an OC1 moving your own body weight and a negligible amount of boat weight, right, it starts to balance out in a more fair way. And looking at the OC6, this is the same idea. If you put a paddler in seat 1 and you have a steersman in the back, it's the same idea, especially if it's a spec boat. You have 400 pounds of a boat plus the steersman to move. Smaller body weight paddlers will have issues comparatively to larger body weight paddlers. And what is your steersman doing? Do they poke or choose to draw? That's going to make a huge difference in keeping the boat straight. Is there a crosswind and they have to poke a little longer than the next person or the last person? That's 1 or 2 seconds that you have to work harder comparatively. It's not a very fair showcase of your ability. So now that all the results get skewed, they don't mean anything, and now you can't use them. So again, this is where the OC1 is a showcase of your individual skill, and being able to hone that makes it easier in team selection. I have run my organization from its inception by giving paddlers a certain score on time trial metrics and using that to put them into 2-person boats, or 3-person boats, or 6-person boats, or 10-person boats, or 20-person boats. And it's a very linear pathing, right? When we insert the faster paddler, the boat goes faster. There is an element of teamwork that is inherent in this, right? But it's not Miracle on Ice, where there's so many different things going on that a good team can strategize to a victory necessarily. It's a showcase of horsepower. We are doing one metronome movement over and over and over again. The amount of precision that each blade enters into the water isn't enough to overcome the horsepower that is behind the blade. The time trial difference is only a second or two. Now we can kind of look at it and say, is this person a better team player? Can they move better? Are they more coachable? These are some of the factors that you can go in. But I promise you, over 500 meters, if you have a paddler that is 40 seconds faster than the next, you want that person in your boat every time. They can be taught to paddle and sink. They can be taught to move slightly differently. And it is harder for the other paddler to learn to knock 40 full seconds off their time trial. In most situations, 5 seconds is worlds apart, right? So every 5-second increment that you go back, you have paddlers that are in a totally different skill threshold. And of course, as you go into longer distance, some of these numbers will skew, right? If you're paddling for an hour and somebody's a minute behind you, they are within the similar echelon because they're only going 5 or 6 seconds per mile slower. There are countries in the world that do not use individual boat time trials. Most of them have the luxury of having their national level team practicing together in the same boat every day of the week. I know in the US, most of our national team people are spread out all over the country, and their ability to paddle together is incredibly limited. You can forego a time trial scenario if you see all these people every single day. And this is the final talking point, is in team boats. If you only paddle team boats, most organizations only have practice 2 or 3 times a week. Even if those practices are 2 hours long each, you're looking at 4 to 6 hours of paddling stimulus in your weekly lineup. So this is a problem, right? This is not enough to really push the threshold and become an elite level racer. If you own your own boat, your ability to go out as often and as long as you want now becomes present. You can paddle twice a day, every day, and get 14 workouts in, as opposed to somebody that is only paddling in a club setting may only get 2 or 3 practices per week. And those team practices are not designed specifically for your improvement. In an OC1, you can work on exactly what you need to, how you need to work on it to improve. When you're paddling with a team as a metronome, it is very hard to make sure that you are moving differently and using your hips and your legs, and where's my top hand, and did I submerge the blade with positive blade angle? There are so many ideas that you need to slow down and do for yourself to get better at. Moving a vessel for yourself and being reinserted into a team boat only makes you a more effective teammate. If you ever doubt that, try to find a tandem boat and try to find somebody that has a very good time trial result and somebody that doesn't, and paddle with them, right? You can immediately feel how effective that person is in the boat with you, and it opens up the idea, I want 19 of those people, or if I have 19 of this guy, this boat's not going anywhere. It starts at the club culture, right? Having the ability to use these vessels, having the openness to learn these vessels, it allows us to really build the racing community as a whole. And we want to showcase all of this ability, right? If you're going to spend this time doing it, you might as well be good at it. Let me know if you have any alternatives to time trialing in order to create team vessels, and if you are adverse to it, let me know why. This week our footage comes from the Renegades Dragon Boat Racing team here in Florida that I'm helping to coach. We are doing OC1 and OC2 small boat days on Sunday to get everybody acquainted with the time trialing and moving the vessels for themselves. We have a really good showing with a lot of people that are coming out. I'm able to provide boats for people that don't own them and giving coaching to people on teaching them, again, how to really showcase their skill level. Thank you all so much for checking out the vlog, and we'll see you all next week for episode number 22.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Lake Hernando. This is here at the park on the equipment and going through one of my classic circus tricks, doing the human flag. So if national team selections came down to strength parameters and the eyeball test, for me personally, it'd be very easy to get onto these teams based on push-ups, pull-ups, and those sort of results. But ultimately, being a good paddler is not about how strong you are off the water and doing things that are irrelevant to paddling, but how good you are at paddling, right? Using a tool to propel a vessel forward in varied conditions in a team setting with various types of balance demands or different types of paddle as the tools. These are the things that showcase your skill set in being a paddler. When I first started paddling, I was much stronger than I am currently. That human flag trick I just did last week, and I could hold it sideways for much longer. I could bench press more. I could do more pull-ups in the past, but my speeds were not comparatively as fast back then as they are now because I'm a better paddler today. And it's not just about being a fitness freak or what you perceive as high-level fitness endeavors, right? So doing 30 pull-ups alone doesn't allow you to make a connection with the water and move a boat forward. So the footage here is here at Claremont, which is notoriously always super windy. Going under this bridge and going into this little pond on the side gives us a little bit of wind protection with the Renegades Dragon Boat Race team. So we're all loaded up here. 3 of those boats are mine, and I'm stuck in the OC2. One of our paddlers, Macy, who we harass here, forgot her Yaku's on her Kantari, and I let her borrow my Draco, which is that gray one with the gold ama on the side. So the first thing we do here is a 100-meter sprint. We have the wind on our back, so the speeds are just a little faster. The OC2 by yourself still scoots pretty well. I'm able to get to like 8 or 9 miles an hour here, sustained for 100 meters. We're using dragon boat paddles, paddling on one side, so just trying to get some D-boat style paddling in. So you can see here that my stroke is not super elongated. With the OC2 especially, the hull is pretty short because half of it is like out of the water. So it responds pretty well to the shorter strokes at a higher rate. The next set here, we do another 100 meters, and I just keep pace with Macy, and she's here on the side, and I just wanted to give her just a visual mark with the nose of the boat being so far forward to paddle against and try to push. I have the luxury of paddling, once or twice a day, every single day in various paddle crafts. So some of these workouts are not paramount for my ongoing success in how hard I push personally. So it's nice being in a position as the coach to watch people and try to push them to be a little bit faster, because that's the whole point, right? I can always get my workout on my own, being self-motivated. Other paddlers definitely need the group setting to be successful, and that's what we're here to do. So coming through, we're between sets, we turn around going upwind, and I'm going next to Diane to watch her paddle, and I wanted to show off my skills going over to her, flying the AMA. Flying the AMA in the OC2 is much easier. The balance point is a little bit further. So this is Diane here in the Scorpius, and I'm paddling next to her, trying to watch some of the movement. There are a lot of idiosyncrasies that are within a dragon boat with the top hand pathing, the body movement, and how you utilize your legs. And when you see them in a dragon boat, when people do them in a group setting, right, you can get away with movement that's not quite as efficient. But in a single person boat, some of those inefficiencies definitely reveal themselves, right? So it's definitely, again, in a coaching scenario, up to us to watch these paddlers and try to make them as successful as they can be. So what we're looking at here as we're going through is the top hand pathing and how we're utilizing the blade through the water. Paddles are going to go from positive to neutral to negative, right? That is just a reality of paddle physics and mechanics. It is fantasy to think that your paddle goes in neutral and stays neutral. And if you are able to successfully create this fiction, your body is going to move in a very bizarre way, right? So I'm demonstrating a paddle going neutral all the way through. This is the reality of a paddle, is positive, neutral, and negative, right? And using your top hand to push down will move a paddle. If you try to keep it positive, move backwards, your body morphs around it, you're not really moving a boat effectively. So you can see here as I'm doing that, my top hand pushes all the way down towards my knee, and this is the thing we're using to propel a boat forward. Again, this is almost a fact. Any paddler that goes fast, their top hand is going to travel downward throughout the stroke in varying levels, right? If their top hand doesn't travel down, they're not going to move it that effectively. Next paddler we have here is Wendy. She is using my Huki V1X, and she was having issues. She's learning the steering, and here we are. She got stuck in the weeds. She is a left side only paddler, so she kept paddling and turning the boat into land, which is what we're facing here. So getting her to switch sides and paddle on the opposite side to try and turn the boat was definitely a learning curve. So I'm over here pushing the nose around. It's my boat, I've painted it. This boat's been through a lot. I have no problem pushing it around. And it's no big deal. You know, when people are learning, sometimes you gotta muscle the boats around, and that's part of the process. But we've successfully got her out of the weeds. So next thing we're doing here is harassing Macy. So she's paddling and we're on both sides of her, and she's asking us, what are we doing here? Steering and being comfortable in close environments kind of emulate some of those high pressure situations that arise in dragon boating or in anything, right? And your ability to stay calm, cool, and collective and keep your movement consistent as these situations arise is really important. So having practice scenarios that runs through that definitely trains you to be consistent with your movement. So going through, this is one of the last things we're doing here is just paddling at a lower intensity, going upwind. So I'm trying to stretch out the stroke a little bit, use my hips and my legs. You can see when I'm paddling hard, my legs move more, and then there are times my legs don't move that much because I'm just trying to keep up with other paddlers. A lot of the times when the stroke rate drops and the boat launches stroke to stroke, you'll see my legs engage more because I'm utilizing my hips to get more out of the stroke each time. As the stroke shortens, depending on the distance and the urgency and the overall speed, the legs are going to move in a proportional amount of way. But yeah, overall, wielding a dragon boat paddle, very similar to the outrigger paddle. You have less positive blade angles to work. but you can still utilize the paddle in mostly the same way. My top hand still goes pretty far down. The paddle is really negative and it's going to slow the boat and you're going to pull the boat down. You're not going to move as well is, again, not a reality, right? Having the paddle go negative is not the end of the world. You're getting less pressure on the blade than you would at positive or neutral, but you're still getting some, and it exits the water very smoothly, right? So it's all a give and take relationship throughout the stroke. So you don't want the strongest part of your stroke to be the negative angle, right? But having the blade in the water doesn't immediately slow it down, sink it, or move you backwards, right? A lot of people are terrified of the negative aspect of the stroke, and I can assure you that it is crucial, no different than the positive and neutral aspects. So we're paddling back to where we started, so we have to go back on the main Claremont Lake here. I don't know the name of the lake exactly, but it's just right in downtown Claremont at Waterfront Park. And you can see it's relatively choppy. I'm leading the way because the place that we're taking the boats out of the water is very small. I want to get there first, get my boat out of the water, and then help all the ladies individually get their boats out of the water. And it's not as choppy as it was in the beginning, but you can see there's a little bit of texture in the water, and it's definitely important to paddle and be comfortable in these conditions. Thank you all so much for checking out the vlog series. If there's anything that you would like to see, any topics discussed, feel free to email, leave a comment, send a message, get in touch. I'm here to interact with you all, and it's been a real joy. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next week for episode number 22.